About 25 years ago, I lived in Baltimore, Maryland. I was working a job doing rehab on a bridge in Lake Hopatcong, New Jersey. Me and Steve would drive up I-83 to I-81 and then get off the interstate to take the state routes in. We worked 4 10-hour days to get our 40 hours in as drive tenders for the drivers in the lake. I-81 and I-83 are mostly trucking routes, and in the winter can be very, very dangerous due to the ruralness of the area. There are many, many miles between some exits. One time we were making the trip home on a Thursday evening in my 77 Impala. It had been snowing on and off, making for a grueling snow trip. We ended up finding a space to pull off to take a leak on the clear part of the shoulder, and when we got back in the car, it wouldn't start. Don't ask me why I shut it off, I just did. Oh well, there was absolutely no way we were going to push it up the side of the highway in the middle of the friggin' night. We had sub-zero gear on from working on the frozen lake all week, so we were suited up in full Carhartt overalls, ski masks, and Sorel boots, and settled in for the night, intending to strike out to the nearest exit in search of a phone at first light. I took the front, Steve took the back. As I dozed, kept on hearing something. Something's about all I could tell you. It sounded like a single instance of gravel crunching, like if someone took just one step and balanced there. It had my spidey sense on semi-alert. I repositioned the mirrors where I could see around the car best I could, and fell back asleep. I awoke to these sounds 2 or 3 more times, only to find nothing. No animal, no person, nada. The last time I awoke, it was to Steve. He was leaning over and screaming, "Start the car! Start the damn car! Start it now!" Not even thinking that the whole reason we were there was because the car wouldn't start, I fumbled the key into ignition. It roared to life and we burnt the crap out of there. As I finally regained my breath from being awoken to such a panic, I asked him, "What the F, man? What the F?" He said he kept hearing something. He wasn't sure what it was, but he was laying on his back, looking out the back windshield up at the tree line. The highway kind of carves through the hills, and he saw a line of people in robes holding torches, and he knew it was time to go. To this day, I can't tell you why the car didn't start before, and it did later. It never had a problem with flooding. I'll never understand what happened. Back in the summer of 2015, my friend Kate and I were coming home from a trip with her parents to the resort town in the mountains famous for skiing for a couple of days. The highway to get there wasn't too bad as it had some significant upgrades for a big athletic contest our city had hosted a couple of years prior. However, it still cut through some relatively remote terrain, and it's not uncommon to see deer and bear on the side of the road. Her parents wanted to go hike up the lake near the highway between the town and the largest city where we lived for a swim, so we pulled off the side of the road and parked in a small parking lot. This was not an official swimming lake, and a logging company used the parking lot, so although we were allowed to be there, there was no one else in the lot, and it is not well known. So we all pile out of the car and start figuring out what we needed to throw in our backpacks for the hike and swim, as we had not planned this when we had left our rental. Out of the corner of our eyes, we notice a man walking out of the woods on a small dirt road that's snaking away from the lodging camp and our intended hiking area. He comes up to the car and starts to explain that he had just been up the road cleaning up a campsite he and his friends had been staying at, and even though where they were camping was illegal, he wanted to come back after and make sure it's clean. Unfortunately, after cleaning up, his battery had died, and he asked if we could drive up the road to the campsite and jump his car for him. He said he didn't want to call roadside assistance because they were in a pretty deserted area of the highway, and he doesn't want to get in trouble for camping illegally. There was something extremely odd about him and his mannerisms to me. However, I couldn't exactly explain why. But from being a reasonably attractive female in my mid-20s and dealing with creepy guys often enough, all my instincts were yelling at me not to follow this man into the woods. I remember that he was oddly specific about the make and model of his car that had broken down, repeating it multiple times, and saying that it was only a minute or two drive down the dirt road. Kate's parents are very amicable and agree right away to go give them a jump. Without waiting, he states that he will meet us at the car and points down the road, saying it's only about a 2 to 3 minute walk down the road. However, being raised on cold case files and Law & Order SVU marathons did not make me want to get into the car or go into the woods. Not wanting to make a scene, I suggest that Kate and I walk over to the small bridge we had crossed to enter the parking lot and take some photos. So she and I walk over there, and I start freaking out and telling her that just something felt off, and I didn't like what was going on. I began texting another friend telling him where we were, and that if I stopped texting him to call the police and tell them what was happening. Cell phone service in the area was super spotty, and I was just praying that he would get all my messages to cause all the hair on the back of my neck to go down. Meanwhile, her parents had gone back into their vehicle and had driven around the dirt road to find the car. About 5 minutes later, we hear their car honking. They had gone down the dirt road slowly, and they hadn't seen anyone. They hadn't seen the man, the car, or the campsite. There was no trace of anyone. We see her parents' car back up down the dirt road and then drive down another road, honking again. Her parents went up and down a couple of small dirt roads for maybe another 5 minutes trying to find the man in his dead car, but they simply couldn't find him, and he never responded to their honks. At this point, Kate and I were getting super agitated by the strange circumstances and just wanted her parents to come back. When they do, I flat out state that I am highly uncomfortable with what had just happened and did not want to continue with our planned hike into the woods. They were spooked too and agreed to get out of the area immediately. We ended up stopping a while further down the highway at a much more popular provincial park lake. I have no idea what was going to go on that day. What would have happened if Kate and I had gotten into the car and gone with her parents? But I felt seriously lucky that we never found out. I'm 24, and this happened on Memorial Day weekend. After a solid week of partying in Las Vegas with two of my best friends and I, all dudes and all the same age, we'd endured a horrific drive from Las Vegas to Los Angeles. If you haven't done this drive before, it's typically a 5-hour stint through the desert, but on a busy weekend it can be extended to 7 to 9 hours, and hungover from a 3-day binge, it's always painful. Our other friends who were flying out convinced us to stay for the better part of the day, to wait out the traffic. We had a buffet and lazed around at the pool for a bit more, hoping to recover. We decided to leave at 3 p.m. Perfect. We'll be home by 8. But boy was I wrong. 2 accidents and a billion people on the road impeded our progress greatly. It took us 6 hours to get to Barstow, typically 2 hours. We filled up with gas and coffee and hit the road again. The stop took an hour due to the mass amounts of people passing through the area. Back on the road at 10, more traffic and a wrong turn. It's now 2:30 and we're passing through Santa Clarita, about 45 minutes from our destination. All of a sudden we hear a massive bang and a pop sound and a huge screeching of our tires. The back left had just popped. It sounded like a piece of steel ripping like paper and then exploding. But I barely managed to pull the car off the side of the freeway and onto the side street. I called AAA, and they said it would be about a 30-minute wait time. We were not in a good situation or mood, but 30 minutes wasn't the end of the world, and we were happy to wait. The neighborhood we were in was alright. Multiple gated communities, but the road we were on was desolate, and a bit of an artery between communities. We all napped, and about 15 minutes later, I was woken by a car driving by in the opposite direction. It was a piece of crap SUV, maybe a Toyota 4Runner, with 4 people in it. I couldn't tell what they looked like, but they were all looking at us. A few minutes after that, I got a call from AAA. Apparently when I called, they thought I said Santa Clara, which is 6 hours north in the San Francisco area. It would be another hour before they could get anyone rerouted to us. We decided to go back to sleep. And roughly 30 minutes later, the same SUV drives by our side of the road, going much faster this time as they pass. They flash their light into my car, a Nissan Xterra. I'm not sure if it was to scare us or to see if anyone was inside, but our windows were fogged. But my red flags went up immediately. For safety reasons, I always kept a Bowie knife and a miniature bat under my seat. I know, it's childish, but it makes me feel safe and secure. So I took the knife and handed my buddy the passenger seat the bat. He was asleep and didn't understand what was going on, so I briefed him, but he passed it off and was out again. 15-ish minutes later, the SUV pulls up about 300 feet behind my car with its brights on, and I officially begin to freak the crap out. I wake up my two friends without moving their heads, so the people behind can't see what we're doing. We start forming strategies, but we are genuinely scared since we are stranded and outnumbered. The SUV turns off the lights, and I can see them passionately talking about something. So we just sit there, freaking the absolute crap out, and waiting for the inevitable. By now we were swapping ideas, trying to understand their intent. I decided to call AAA again, and they gave me an ETA of about 15 minutes. Home stretch. But just then, the passenger and driver doors both open, and two linebacker-sized men get out, hoods up, and all in black. The driver leans against the grill of my car and smokes a cigarette, staring directly at us. The passenger stares 1 feet away. I felt like they were playing mind games. Maybe they saw the light from my cell phone. It felt like the passenger was staring forever. The three of us are just sitting there, stewing in our own fear. The passenger walks up and talks to the driver. The other two doors open, revealing one small person with a beanie pulled low, and another large hooded man walked out. The four began talking and walked casually towards my car. I pull my knife ready, my buddy has his bat, and my other friend pops his fist up like a fighting Irishman. They get close and then stop about halfway. In the distance were the lights of a tow truck. I looked back, and thank God, they were getting back in their SUV. As the tow operator gets out, we get out and he starts his business. The SUV speeds off fairly quickly. We didn't get home till 5 a.m., and I'm not entirely sure what they were planning. I assume they thought the car was abandoned and wanted to take it. Or something far more sinister. If they knew we were in there, my friend was in the back seat, and he has long hair, so maybe they thought it was a girl or something. I'll never know for sure, but I'll tell you what, it was extremely intense. The moral of the story: never leave Vegas late. And if you're driving, maybe buy a shotgun.